a little history on Ukraine up to the point where they became the nation of Ukraine. Well, before that, they were under the Russian Empire and the Habsburg Austria. That's what controlled them. What was, who they were under before this. All the territory of Ukraine until the Bolshevik Red Army. This is a very concise history of how Ukraine came to be. But in 1919, the Bolshevik army took control, very bloody civil war. And so then they were known as the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. Okay, so there's a war going on in Ukraine, right? That's basically the popular thing that people are talking about. I support Ukraine. And yeah, of course I support Ukraine too. But there's, like as usual with a popularity contest, you can forget the popularity contest and think there's more to the story than just I support Ukraine. Hey, they're suffering right now. I've seen boots on the ground, evidence of what they're suffering right now. But let's get into the story of a little bit of what's going on, a little more. And also, how this is going to affect you. Wherever you live, Europe, United States, Canada, Mexico. Yeah. Even if there's not going to be any nuclear exchanges where you live, if that were to happen, it'd be disastrous. Like they say, no man is an island, no country exists very well without the help of his neighbors. Let's put it that way. But anyway, if you like Putin or you don't, Vladimir Putin, he has brought stability to a country decimated by the collapse of the Soviet Union after Boris Yeltsin. I don't know if any of you remember Boris Yeltsin. It'd be a good day if he wasn't completely intoxicated on camera, to say the least. I would say that based on what I remember and what I've seen again of how Vladimir Putin was with the U.S. politicians and all politicians, they were very surprised that Vladimir Putin, he wasn't playing games. He wasn't Boris Yeltsin number 2. No. He stood up to the West. And that's not something the West likes very much, even if you're right. If I was to stand up to the West and I was right, I'd be bad. Because that makes sense. Okay? And I know that where I live, I'm in the West. So you have to have an unbiased perspective. You can't just think, my team's always right. When your team's wrong, there has to be some better thought processes involved. Yeltsin cooperated for the most part with NATO, possibly to the demise of Russia. And why would a president of Russia ever do something that was detrimental to his own country? Of course not. Let me ask you this. Should NATO exist? Maybe. Maybe they shouldn't. I mean, all you got with NATO is war, and proxy wars, and them justifying themselves to exist. You know, what's more important, that they actually um, cause there to be peace and no war, or to keep having unending, never-ending wars? I mean, like, what's the war on terrorism? I mean, if you know what terrorism is, it's basically anything that the government doesn't like. Yeah, I'd look it up before I would say that everyone in the Middle East is a terrorist. That's how people seem to think. But yeah, NATO justifies its importance with never-ending war, and basically make strong-arming people into joining it. So I don't know what to say. But under Putin, Russia benefited from rising oil prices because in the early 2000s, after Boris Yeltsin, he sold a lot of petroleum. That's what they had a lot of, and really helped the economy of Russia, man. Russia was becoming a respectable nation again. I mean, the embarrassment under Boris Yeltsin must have been hard to take. I mean, there's that too. And by the way, I'm not condoning Putin. I'm just saying this is how it was. He brought prosperity to the people. Unoccupied facilities for manufacturing he opened up, and he's still doing that. But of course, the U.S. Has brought sanctions against Russian oil. Your gas prices would be lower if they went ahead and bought Russian oil like they used to, and made it easier to drill oil in the U.S. Yes, that's right. There's a lot of pending permits to drill oil in the U.S., but there's so much red tape in the way, it's not even profitable. So your gas prices are high because war. Again. But we're getting only started here. What's going on in Ukraine? First of all, I'd like to suggest watching another YouTube channel that has boots on the ground view of what's going on. KreosanEnglish. They've gone through apartment buildings that have been blasted by artillery. It's very sad, but it's the truth. It's not biased, it's just what's happening, and so I respect their YouTube channel greatly. I think they ought to have more traffic on their channel, personally. But, why all of this war? Why would Vladimir Putin want to come into Ukraine? Well, it's Donbass, basically. Wants to liberate Donbass and bring it to Russia. Because this is why. Well, first of all, Vladimir accused Ukraine of genocide against the predominantly Russian-speaking people there. And they are. I'd say they're Russian-leaning people that live in the Donbass region. So what it comes down to is basically he feels that that whole region was part of Russia, and he wants to bring it back into Russia. You may not be thinking about this, but I think the world is getting sick of NATO and having sanctions put upon them. And sanctions are an act of war. Remember Japan. What happened after the U.S. sanctioned Japan? Yeah, and there was Pearl Harbor. So I think diplomatic relations ought to be implemented a lot more than sanctions. We're turning an act of war. Let's not kid ourselves. You know, if someone cut off your ability to survive, that's an act of war. Come on. But if you've been following this, you should be a little, like I said, worried about China. You know, President Xi Jinping, uh, you know, he has something to gain in all this. He's not stupid. Um, he's been buying up the cheap Russian oil that the U.S. should be buying right now. And so, you know, it doesn't stop there, by the way. It's very low cost petroleum, Russian petroleum, because of the sanctions. So, obviously, Xi Jinping is thinking, I'm going to buy all this perfect, beautiful Russian petroleum and see what we can get from it. But it doesn't stop there. No, it doesn't stop there. You know who else is benefiting is India, big time. There's actually something called BRICS, BRICS. It's a group of nations that recently sort of have plans to not only buy Russian oil, but ditch the whole petrodollar thing and come up with a a global reserve currency. Who's in BRICS? Russia, China, Brazil, India, South Africa. They actually held a summit, and so, however it shakes out, you can see that you have to look at things outside of your perspective. You should be worried about China, not because they're buying Russian oil, but because a lot of things have changed in recent times in China. First of all, we're reliant on their microchips. That's sad, but we don't even need to go into that. I mean, they're also reliant on the U.S. dollar, but if the U.S. dollar was to tank, then how good would the U.S. be for China? Then you have a whole new ballpark. At some point, I'm going to give you a list of nations that are nuclear powers. It might surprise you who is and who isn't. It's a short list, but there's more that are nuclear powers than what I would list. But in 2014, President of China, Xi Jinping, changed from a policy of defense to a proactive policy to advance his global interests worldwide. And, you know, it just goes to show, you know, I've noticed that the Chinese government, its leaders can be very vague, and they do that on purpose. They do that on purpose. They don't want you to know what cards they're holding. I think it's a Chinese proverb, and I'm probably saying it way off, but basically showing kindness is a weakness. So I would definitely keep my eyes on China. And don't you think for 1 minute, you know, because, you know, I am a U.S. citizen, but don't you think for 1 minute that it's going to be China or Russia that attacks first, or Israel, or India, or North Korea or something? Probably going to be Europe. It doesn't matter who starts it first. I'd say within our lifetime, the way this is slowly escalating, and with all these this aggressive posturing, and the need to warrant more wars to fund the war machine, it's inevitable. Let's not kid ourselves. I hope it's not inevitable, but what good is that? Okay? You got to be prepared for the worst of circumstances. Always. What if it happens tomorrow? Even a small war, can you be prepared for that? Food and water, shelter, and what happens following that? So, I mean, Russia warns that nuclear war would result, but only to defend its sovereignty. And I believe what Putin says. He's a straight talker. That Vladimir Putin. He's a straight talker, from what I've seen. And so, you have to admire the qualities of him for that. And I'm not saying, oh, I'm for Putin or something. He's a politician. Never trust a politician, ever. No matter where you live. But again, Putin believes that the territory that he is fighting for is territory that is separated from Russia. And indeed, it was part of Russia one time. But because of the Bolshevik Revolution, it became what it is. And now people are suffering badly. Everybody. Let's not be biased here. The U.S. citizens are suffering because the gas prices are too high. And so everywhere around the U.S., people are suffering too. Obviously, the people, in Donbass region, all of Ukraine are suffering too because of this. The Russians are suffering because of this. You can't hate the Russian people. They're people, and they have a duty, if they're military personnel, to do what they're told. And you have all of Europe suffering too. You have basically the whole world suffering. And if Putin doesn't get what he wants, he's a straight talker and he's a straight shooter. At some point, if things don't go his way, he's going to be like a cornered animal. Or a cornered human, for that matter. Any cornered creature is going to pull out all the stops. Take the gloves off. And that's when everyone suffers. So should we even have NATO? Should we just allow this to happen? Feeding arms to Ukraine to defeat Russia, in the end, could just be a huge mistake. You gotta remember, even though the U.S. has nuclear armaments, they're outdated and they haven't been tested well enough, and we've even gotten rid of a lot of them. But China, and France and Israel, North Korea, Pakistan, India, United Kingdom, and the list goes on, has nuclear arms. And you believe you me, Russia, their nuclear arms are fast. They have a very powerful nuclear arm that can defeat the defenses of the U.S. So, here we are in a very scary situation. I wouldn't worry about it. I prepare for it. Worrying achieves nothing but anxiety. Do you think I'm worried about it? Totally not. But, like all preppers, we put away food, water, maybe get some iodine tablets in case you have a nuclear fallout where you live. I started thinking a little more proactively, I would say the way Israel has been treating its neighbors terribly. Look at Palestine. What happened to Palestine? And by the way, who cares about Palestine, right? I always see, I'm for Ukraine. Well, are you also for Palestine? They're having it's an open air prison. All their property's being taken. I tell you what, whatever's popular for the day, right? That's why it's like when you watch the news, it's like I got a migraine already and I haven't even gone past 10 minutes because it's biased. In the end of the day, we just want the facts. And the facts are the war in the world is escalating. You need to be prepared. And I would stop feeding the popularity contest by saying I support so-and-so. Let's support human life and peace. When it comes down to it, the people of Donbass, it's suspected that they want to be Russian. But I haven't gone down there and done a poll. But in the end of the day, Russia's going to get Donetsk and Luhansk. It's going to be his property, one way or the other. How much property has the U.S. seized over the years? Okay? How much has me? Yeah, I mean, if it was up to me, I'd say no, but my ancestors in the U.S., how much property have they seized? But that's okay. So let's not be hypocrites here. I'll tell you something. We can't keep thinking in the same frame of mind. It's not getting us anywhere. Look at how many rights we've lost due to the war on terrorism. Where's the Constitution? Where is it? It has no effect. It's without effect. The police can search your car. Asset forfeiture. They come in your house, steal everything because they suspect that you could be doing something wrong. So, like I've said a million times, we have to come together. Everyone who wants to at least have the Constitution come back and start coming up with answers. I think we have to start from scratch. Start the Constitution over again and say, hey, this is real. We have to obey this. No more baloney. Let's stop all the crazy laws that branched off of it that are intrusive to it. I hope you guys are all safe and stay safe and keep thinking. Use your critical thinking skills. It may not have taught you that in school, but you got it. Who cares if the school system indoctrinated you? You're a free thinker and you can think outside the box and survive. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Montaigne Wildcat. Thank you so much.